I found them in a metal box behind the boiler. 23 report cards, each one signed and dated June 15th, 1967. The ink hadn't faded. The paper felt fresh, as if someone had just set them down and walked away. But that's impossible. This school has been renovated 4 times since 1967. The basement was gutted in 1983, flooded in 1995, completely rewired in 2008. Yet here they were, perfect, pristine, waiting. My name is Thomas Mitchell. I've been the night janitor at Millbrook Elementary for 12 years. I know every corner of this building, every loose floorboard, every light that flickers just before it dies. I've mopped these halls 10,000 times. I've heard the settling, groans of old wood, the whisper of wind through gaps in the windows, the distant hum of the heating system cycling on and off. But I've never heard children laughing at 3 in the morning. Not until I found those report cards. The first thing you notice about a school at night is the silence. It's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of waiting. The desks sit in perfect rows, expectant. The chalkboards hold tomorrow's lessons. The coat hooks wait for small hands to hang up winter jackets. Everything pauses, suspended between the day that was and the day that will be. Except sometimes, in the deeper hours, you realize the school isn't waiting for tomorrow. It's waiting for yesterday to come back. I should have left the box where I found it. Should have pretended I never saw it wedged behind the water heater, covered in dust that looked decades old but felt like morning frost. Should have finished my rounds, clocked out, driven home to my empty apartment and my instant coffee and my late-night television shows. Instead, I carried it upstairs to the main office. I sat at the secretary's desk under the fluorescent lights that always buzz just loud enough to remind you they're there. I opened the box and began to read Sarah Chen, grade 2, excellent student, loves mathematics and story time, shows remarkable ability to see patterns others miss. Final grade, A+. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore had written in the margins. Sarah asked me today why the shadows in the classroom move when no one is walking. I told her it was just the light from the windows. She said the shadows were trying to tell us something. I think she might be right. Michael Rodriguez, grade 3, struggles with reading but shows improvement. Excellent at art projects. Quiet child who observes everything. Final grade, B. Mrs. Whitmore's note. Michael drew a picture of our classroom yesterday. In his drawing, there were more children than we actually have. When I asked him about it, he said those were the children who come to school when the sun goes down. I counted them. There were exactly 23. Emma Thompson, grade 1, delightful child with vivid imagination. Loves drawing and singing. Sometimes talks to herself during quiet time. Final grade, A. The margin note was longer. Emma has been having conversations with someone named Jenny during recess. She says Jenny is 7 years old and has been in first grade for a very long time. Jenny is teaching her songs that Emma couldn't possibly know. I looked up the enrollment records. There was a Jenny Martinez in the 1952 first grade class. She died in a car accident that summer. Emma has never seen those records. I read through all 23 report cards that night. Each one perfect. Each one ending with Mrs. Whitmore's increasingly disturbed observations. Each one dated June 15th, 1967. The last day of school before summer vacation. The day 23 children walked out of Millbrook Elementary and never made it home. I know this because I looked it up. I spent weeks in the library digging through. Old newspaper archives, police reports, missing persons files. The story was there, buried in the local paper's back pages. 23 children, ages 6 to 9, left school at the normal time on the last day of classes. Parents waited at home for children who never arrived. Search parties scoured the woods. The FBI was called in. Psychics offered their services. The story made national news for exactly 1 week. Then it stopped. The reports ended. The investigation was quietly closed. The families moved away, one by one, over the following months. By 1968, it was as if those 23 children had never existed, but their report cards remained. Signed by Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore on June 15, 1967. Approved by Principal Harold Vance. Stamped by the school secretary, Mrs. Betty Hamilton. All of them bearing the official Millbrook Elementary seal. All of them impossible because I checked the employment records. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore never worked at Millbrook Elementary. Principal Harold Vance died in 1963. Mrs. Betty Hamilton transferred to another district in 1965. The people who signed these report cards didn't exist, at least not in 1967. But someone wanted me to find them. Someone left them where they knew I would look. Someone who knew I work alone in this building, who knew I would be curious, who knew I would search for answers. Someone who knew I would recognize the handwriting, because I've seen Mrs. Whitmore's careful script before. I've seen it on the chalkboard in room 237, written in chalk that appears fresh every morning, despite the fact that I erased it the night before. I've seen it on notes left in the supply closet, reminders about parent conferences and field trip, permissions for students who graduated decades ago. I've seen it in the margins of library books, commenting on stories about children who find doors that lead to places they can't leave. And tonight, as I write this, I can hear Mrs. Whitmore's voice drifting down from the second floor. She's taking attendance, 23 names called out. In alphabetical order, 23 voices answering present. The same voices I've been hearing for 12 years, every night. Just after midnight, the same voices that answer when I call the roll. Signed by Thomas Mitchell, night janitor, Millbrook Elementary School. Date, every night since I found the box. Time, always 3:17 a.m. The time the school clock stopped on June 15th, 1967. Welcome back to the creepy journal, where every story leaves a mark you can't erase. If you're new here, subscribe now for the bell rings for the final time. Ring the notification bell, because some lessons can only be learned in the dark. Arrival and setting. The thing about Millbrook Elementary is that it looks exactly the same as it did in 1967. Not because it's been preserved, because it refuses to change. I've watched contractors come in with renovation plans, seen them stand in the main hallway with their blueprints and measuring tools, watched them shake their heads and pack up their equipment without explanation. The building has been painted 17 times since I started working here. Every morning, the walls are the same pale green they were in 1967. The floors have been replaced twice. Every night, I walk across the same worn linoleum that 23 children stepped on for the last time. More than 50 years ago, the principal's office has been remodeled 4 times. Mrs. Henderson has been principal for 8 years, but her nameplate never stays put. Every morning, she finds Harold Vance's name on her door, etched in brass, as if he never left. She stopped trying to remove it. She stopped coming to school after dark. I understand why. The hallways stretch differently at night. During the day, it takes 30 steps to walk from the main entrance to the cafeteria. At night, it takes 47. I've counted. I've measured. I've marked the walls with chalk that disappears by morning. The building grows longer in the darkness, as if it's making room for something or someone. Room 237 is where Mrs. Whitmore taught. It's been a computer lab for 15 years, but the computers never work properly. They turn on by themselves, displaying green text on black screens. Always the same message. Class will begin at 8:30 a.m. Please take your seats. The IT department has replaced every computer 3 times. The message always comes back. Last month, I found a lesson plan on the computer lab desk. June 15th, 1967. Today, we will practice writing our names in cursive. Remember, neat handwriting is important. Someone will be reading your work for a very long time. It was written in Mrs. Whitmore's careful script on paper that should have crumbled to dust decades ago. The windows in room 237 show the wrong view. During the day, they face the playground, where current students play dodgeball and swing on modern equipment. At night, they show the same playground, but the swings are different. Old-fashioned, metal instead of plastic. And there are children playing there, even though the school is locked, even though it's past midnight, even though those children should be home in bed, or should be home in their graves. I've watched them play for hours. 23 children, ages 6 to 9, wearing clothes that were fashionable in 1967. They never grow tired. They never go home. They play the same games, laugh at the same jokes, argue about the same rules. And when the church bells chime, 3:17 a.m., they line up single file and march toward the school building. That's when I hear their footsteps in the hallway. 23 pairs of small feet, walking in perfect synchronization, heading toward room 237. I've tried to follow them, but the hallway stretches longer each time I try. The fluorescent lights flicker in rhythm with their footsteps. The walls seem to breathe. The school library has been digitized twice, but the card catalog never goes away. Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, has given up trying to remove it. She's also given up trying to explain why books keep appearing on the shelves. Old books with checkout cards that show the same 23 names over and over, as if they're still borrowing books, still reading, still learning. Last week, I found a book called How to Say Goodbye When You Can't Leave. It was checked out to Emma Thompson on June 14th, 1967, due back June 15th. 57 years overdue. The basement is where I found the report cards, but it's also where I found other things. A lunchbox with a child's name written in fading. Marker, a single patent leather shoe, size 13, still shiny despite decades of age. A photograph of 23 children standing in front of the school, their faces bright with end-of-school excitement. In the photograph, they're all wearing the same clothes I see them in every night at 3:17 a.m. The gymnasium echoes with the sound of children playing dodgeball, but only when it's empty. The custodial closet smells like crayons and paste, even though those supplies haven't been used in years. The main office phone rings at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night. But when I answer it, all I hear is a child's voice asking if their mother has called to pick them up yet. The answer is always no, because their mothers stopped calling 57 years ago. The conversations start just after midnight. I first noticed them during my 3rd week on the job, faint voices drifting from the empty classrooms. I thought maybe it was the heating system, or sound carrying from the street, or my mind playing tricks in the late hours. But conversations have rhythm, they have pattern. And these voices followed the same routine every night. In room 118, Sarah Chen discusses her mathematics homework with someone who responds in Mrs. Whitmore's patient voice. If Tommy has 3 apples and gives away 2, how many does he have left? Sarah's voice, bright and eager. 1, Mrs. Whitmore, but why would Tommy give away his apples? Mrs. Whitmore's response, sometimes, Sarah, we give away things we can't keep anyway. The conversation repeats every night. Same words, same inflection, same question about the apples, and the same philosophical answer that no 8-year-old should have to understand. In room 152, Michael Rodriguez asks about the art project they're working on. He wants to know if he can use more colors, if he can draw outside the lines, if his picture of the school needs to look exactly like the real building. Mrs. Whitmore tells him that art is about seeing things differently, about showing others what they might miss if they only look once. Can I draw the children who come to school at night? Michael asks. Draw what you see, Mrs. Whitmore replies. Someone needs to remember. Emma Thompson's voice comes from room 201. She's singing a song I don't recognize. Something about children who dance when the moon is full, who play games that last forever, who never have to go home because they are home. Her voice is sweet and clear, the kind of voice that would make parents smile during a school pageant. But Emma Thompson's parents stopped smiling 57 years ago. The conversations happen in real time. I can walk from room to room and hear them in sequence, as if the children are actually there, actually talking to their teacher, actually participating in lessons that ended before I was born. But when I look through the windows and the doors, the rooms are empty, desks imperfect, rows chalkboards clean. No sign of the voices that fill the air with the sound of learning, except for the footprints, small shoe prints in the dust that shouldn't be there. Because I clean these floors every night, they appear in patterns that suggest children walking to the blackboard, returning to their seats, lining up for recess. The prints are always fresh, always clear, always exactly the right size for children aged 6 to 9. The strangest part is that the conversations reference current events as if they're happening in 1967. David Park asks Mrs. Whitmore about the moon landing, but he talks about it as something that might happen someday, not something that happened 2 years later. Sarah Chen mentions wanting to be a computer programmer when she grows up, but she describes computers as magical machines that might exist in the future. They're trapped in 1967, but they're learning about the world as it changes around them. They know things they shouldn't know, understand concepts they never had the chance to study. Emma Thompson discusses environmental protection with the sophistication of someone who's watched the world change for decades. Michael Rodriguez talks about art movements that didn't exist until the 1980s. They're growing up without growing older, learning without living. Sometimes the conversations include other voices, children who attended Millbrook Elementary in different decades, different years. Jenny Martinez, who died in 1952, teaches Emma Thompson songs from the 1940s. A boy named Robert speaks with the accent of the 1930s, sharing stories about the Great Depression that he heard from his grandfather. The school collects its lost children, holds them in its halls, lets them learn from each other across the decades. Time moves differently inside these walls. The past and present exist simultaneously, creating a classroom where every lesson is eternal. At 3:17 a.m., all the conversations stop. The silence that follows is deeper than the silence that comes before. It's the silence of children who have been talking for 57 years, who need a moment to rest their voices before they begin again. But they always begin again, because the school day at Millbrook Elementary never really ends. It just pauses, waiting for the next lesson, the next question, the next opportunity to teach someone something they need to know. And I'm beginning to understand that I'm not just the janitor here. I'm the newest student. The lunchbox appeared on my cart during my second month. Small metal, decorated with cartoon characters from the 1960s. The name, David Park, was written in fading black marker on the side. Inside, a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, an apple that looked fresh despite being impossible, and a note written in a child's careful handwriting for the man who cleans our school. Thank you for keeping it nice. From David. The sandwich was peanut butter and jelly, cut diagonally. The apple was sweet and crisp. The note was written on paper that should have crumbled decades ago. I ate the sandwich and the apple. I kept the note. The next night, there was a thermos of chocolate milk next to the lunchbox. The night after that, a cookie wrapped in a napkin. A different child's handwriting each time. From Sarah, from Emma, from Michael. Always thanking me for taking care of their school. Always signed with the careful letters of children who learned cursive from Mrs. Whitmore. I tried to leave the lunchbox in the lost and found. By morning, it was back on my cart. I tried to lock it in the supply closet. It appeared on my cart the next night, along with a note from Emma Thompson. We know you're hungry when you work. Teachers need to eat too. Teachers, they think I'm a teacher. The lunchbox is just the beginning. A pencil case appeared on the main office desk, filled with perfectly sharpened pencils and an eraser that removes mistakes as if they never existed. A red apple sits on the windowsill in room 237 every morning, fresh and bright, with a note that says, for Mrs. Whitmore, from all of us. But Mrs. Whitmore doesn't exist. She never did. A school clock hangs in the hallway outside the principal's office. It's not the same clock that was there during the day. This one has Roman numerals and hands that move backward, counting down. Instead of counting up, at 3:17 a.m., both hands point to 12, and the clock chimes 23 times. That's when I notice the other objects. A child's sweater hangs on the coat hook in room 118, pink with white buttons, the kind of sweater a mother would knit for her daughter to wear on the last day of school. It's never dirty, never wrinkled, never warm to the touch, despite hanging in the same spot for 57 years. A book bag sits by the door in room 152, filled with homework assignments that are always perfectly completed, always signed by parents who stopped signing homework decades ago. The assignments are about subjects that didn't exist in 1967: computer science, environmental studies, space exploration. The children are learning about the future they'll never see. A pair of glasses rests on the desk in room 201, thick lenses that magnify everything, including things that shouldn't be there. When I look through them, I can see the children, all 23 of them, sitting in their assigned seats, listening to Mrs. Whitmore's lessons, raising their hands to answer questions about a world that has moved on without them. The glasses always fog up when I try to clean them, as if they're breathing. A jump rope lies in the corner of the gymnasium, still moving in a rhythm that suggests children are jumping, even though no one is there. The rope never stops moving, never gets tangled, never wears out. Sometimes I can hear the rhyme they're chanting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mrs. Whitmore's at the door. 5, 6, 7, 8. Children who are never late. 9, 10, 11, 12. Ring the bell and go to hell. But they never go to hell. They never go anywhere. A record player sits on the music teacher's desk, playing the same song over and over. It's a children's song about friendship and learning, about staying together no matter what happens. The record is scratched and warped, but the song never skips, never stops, never changes. The music follows me through the halls. A camera sits on the shelf in the library, an old Polaroid that takes pictures of things that aren't there. When I picked it up, it flashed automatically, producing a photograph of 23 children standing in the main hallway, smiling at the camera, raising their hands in greeting in the photograph. I'm standing behind them, holding a mop, wearing the same uniform I put on every night. My face is younger, but my eyes are the same. At the bottom of the photograph, someone has written, "Mr. Mitchell's first day. Welcome to Millbrook Elementary." But the photograph was taken 57 years ago. The objects multiply each night. A child's drawing of the school building, but with an extra floor that doesn't exist. A report card with my name on it, filled out in Mrs. Whitmore's handwriting, grading my performance as a janitor. A+ in dedication, punctuality, and understanding. A note in the margin, "Thomas shows excellent promise. He's learning to see what others miss." A teacher's edition textbook appears on my cart, filled with lesson plans about custodial science, about the importance of maintaining sacred spaces, about the responsibility of caretakers to preserve what others have forgotten. The lessons are written in multiple handwritings, children's careful script, Mrs. Whitmore's elegant cursive, and my own handwriting, though I don't remember writing any of it. The final object is a key, old brass, worn, smooth by decades of use. It appears on my key ring every night, though I remove it every morning. The key doesn't fit any lock in the current building, but it fits perfectly in doors that appear only in the darkness. Doors that lead to rooms that exist only in the memories of children who can't remember being anywhere else. The key is labeled with a single word, home. The elevator in Millbrook Elementary has always been temperamental. During the day, it serves 3 floors with mechanical precision. Ground floor for the main office and kindergarten. Second floor for grades 1 through 3. Third floor for grades 4 through 6 and the library. But at night, the elevator serves different floors. I noticed it during my first week, when I pressed the button for the 3rd floor to empty the library trash cans. The elevator shuddered, rose past the 3rd floor, and stopped at a floor that shouldn't exist. The doors opened to reveal a hallway I'd never seen before, lit by overhead lights that cast shadows in impossible directions. The floor directory next to the elevator showed 4 floors. The 4th floor was labeled administrative offices, authorized personnel only. Below that, in smaller text, Mrs. Whitmore's classroom, advanced studies. I didn't get off the elevator that night. I pressed the button for the 3rd floor repeatedly until the elevator shuddered back down to familiar territory. But I could smell chalk dust drifting from the 4th floor. Hear the faint sound of a teacher's voice, explaining a lesson about temporal mechanics and the persistence of memory. The elevator remembers things the building has forgotten. 2 weeks later, I accidentally pressed the button for the 4th floor while carrying supplies to the library. The elevator rose smoothly, as if it had been waiting for me to make this choice. The doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with classroom doors. each one bearing a teacher's name from a different decade. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore. Room 401. Advanced Studies in Temporal Education, Mrs. Jennifer Hayes. Room 402. Remedial Living. Students Who Forgot How to Leave, Mr. Robert Sterling. Room 403. Introduction to Permanent Residence. The hallway stretched farther than the building should allow, doors extending into a distance that seemed to curve back on itself. The walls were covered with children's artwork that showed the same building from dozens of different time periods, as if the school had been teaching students from multiple decades simultaneously. I walked to Mrs. Whitmore's classroom and looked. Through the window in the door, 23 children sat in perfect rows, their hands folded on their desks, their attention focused on the woman writing on the blackboard. She was exactly as I had imagined her middle-aged, wearing a dress that was fashionable in 1967, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her handwriting was precise, elegant, the same handwriting I'd seen on the report cards and the notes left throughout the school. She was teaching a lesson about the nature of time, about how some moments are too important to end, about how certain places exist outside the normal flow of years and decades. She drew diagrams on the blackboard showing how memory can create physical spaces, how emotion can bend the laws of physics, how love can make a place more real than reality. The children took notes in composition books, their pencils moving in perfect synchronization. They asked questions that demonstrated understanding beyond their years. They seemed to know they were part of something larger than a simple classroom lesson. Mrs. Whitmore looked up from her blackboard and saw me watching through the window. She smiled and gestured for me to come in. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. She walked to the door and unlocked it from the inside, opening it just wide enough for me to see into the classroom clearly. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice warm and welcoming, "we've been waiting for you. Please, take your seat." There was an empty desk at the back of the room, adult-sized, with my name written on a placard. A composition book lay open on the desk, filled with notes written in my handwriting about the history of Millbrook Elementary, about the children who never left, about the responsibility of those who care for places where time moves differently. "I don't understand," I said. "Understanding comes with time," Mrs. Whitmore replied, "and we have all the time we need." Sarah Chen turned in her seat and smiled at me. "Mr. Mitchell, you're going to love it here. Mrs. Whitmore is the best teacher in the whole school. She teaches us about everything." "Everything?" I asked. "Everything that matters," said Michael Rodriguez. "Like how to stay together when the world wants to pull you apart. Like how to keep learning when everyone else has stopped teaching. Like how to make sure someone remembers." Emma Thompson raised her hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, is Mr. Mitchell going to be in our class now?" "Mr. Mitchell has always been in our class," Mrs. Whitmore replied. "He just didn't know it yet. But now he's ready to learn." I stepped back from the doorway. "I have to finish my work. I have to clean the building." "The building is already clean," Mrs. Whitmore said. "You've been cleaning it for 57 years. Every night, the same routine, the same halls, the same floors. Haven't you noticed that the dirt never really accumulates? That the trash cans are never really full? That the building maintains itself?" I hadn't noticed, but now that she mentioned it, I realized she was right. The school was always clean before I started working. I was just going through the motions, following a routine that had been established decades ago. "Who hired me?" I asked. "You hired yourself," Mrs. Whitmore said. "Just like I hired myself." just like all of us chose to be here. We're the ones who couldn't leave, who couldn't bear to let this place die. We're the ones who love it too much to let it go. David Parks stood up from his desk. "Mr. Mitchell, would you like to see your report card?" He handed me a manila folder. Inside was a report card with my name, dated with yesterday's date, filled out in Mrs. Whitmore's careful handwriting. My grades were all A's, with comments about my dedication, my attention to detail, my understanding of the school's special needs at the bottom. Mrs. Whitmore had written, "Thomas has shown exceptional growth in his understanding of his role at Millbrook Elementary. He demonstrates a natural ability to care for places that exist outside normal time. Recommend advancement to permanent staff position." It was signed by Principal Harold Vance, who had died in 1963. "I don't understand," I said again. "You will," Mrs. Whitmore said. "Learning takes time, and time is what we have here, all the time in the world." I backed away from the door, toward the elevator. The children waved goodbye, their faces bright with the kind of happiness that comes from knowing they'll see you again soon. The elevator took me back to the 3rd floor, to the familiar library with its familiar books and familiar silence. But I could still hear Mrs. Whitmore's voice drifting down through the ceiling, continuing her lesson about time and memory and the places that refuse to be forgotten. The 4th floor elevator button has been glowing ever since. The first time I heard my own voice, I was emptying trash cans in the main hallway. It was just after 2 a.m., and I was following my usual routine: office first, then classrooms, then common areas. I had just finished room 118 when I heard someone speaking in the corridor behind me. "The children are learning well," my voice said. "They understand more than we give them credit for." I turned around. The hallway was empty, but I could hear Mrs. Whitmore's voice responding. "Yes, Thomas, you've been an excellent addition to our staff. The children have grown quite fond of you." I hadn't spoken. I was alone in the building, as I was every night. But the conversation continued, my voice and hers, discussing lesson plans and student progress, and the importance of maintaining the school's special environment. "I'm concerned about the new construction plans," my voice said. "If they tear down the east wing, where will the children go during recess?" "Don't worry," Mrs. Whitmore replied. "The building will protect itself. It always has." I stood perfectly still, listening to myself have a conversation I had never participated in. The voices were coming from the direction of the principal's office, but when I walked toward them, they moved further away, always just around the next corner, always just out of sight. The conversation lasted 15 minutes. I heard myself discussing individual students, their progress and challenges, their special needs and remarkable abilities. I heard myself speaking with the authority of someone who had taught these children for years, who knew their personalities, and their dreams and their fears. But I had never met these children. I had never spoken to Mrs. Whitmore. I had never had any of the conversations I was hearing. The next night, it happened again. This time, I heard my voice coming from room 237, speaking to the children about the importance of keeping the building clean, about how every surface and every corner deserved respect and care. "Mr. Mitchell," Sarah Chun's voice said, "why do you work at night?" "Because that's when the building needs me most," my voice replied. "During the day, it's busy with learning and teaching. At night, it rests. And when something rests, it needs someone to watch over it." "Like a guardian angel?" asked Emma Thompson. "Like a friend," my voice said. "Someone who cares about this place and everyone in it." I pressed my ear to the door, but I could see my reflection in the glass. I was standing in the hallway, listening to myself talk to children who weren't there, giving answers to questions I had never been asked. The conversations began happening every night. I would hear my voice in different parts of the building, always talking to Mrs. Whitmore or the children, always discussing things I had never learned, always demonstrating knowledge I had never acquired. But the strangest part was that the conversations seemed to be happening in sequence. Each night, I heard the next part of an ongoing relationship, the next development in a story that was being told without my participation. On Tuesday, I heard my voice volunteering to help with a special project. On Wednesday, I heard myself agreeing to stay late to help organize the library. On Thursday, I heard myself accepting a permanent position as the school's nighttime educational assistant. I'm honored to be part of the Millbrook Elementary family, my voice said. This place has given me more than I ever imagined possible. And you've given it life, Mrs. Whitmore replied. You've helped us remember what we're here for. The conversations were creating a history I had never lived, establishing relationships I had never formed, building a story that was somehow becoming true through repetition. Last week, I heard my voice explaining to the children why I had decided to stay at Millbrook Elementary forever. Some places choose you, my voice said, and when they do, you have to choose them back. This school needs someone who understands its special nature, someone who can help preserve what makes it unique. Will you really never leave? Asked Michael. Rodriguez, where would I go? My voice replied. Everything I need is here. Everyone I care about is here. This is home. I realized that the conversations weren't just echoes of things that had happened. They were rehearsals for things that would happen. My voice was practicing for decisions I hadn't made yet, preparing for a future I hadn't chosen. But as I listened night after night, I began to understand that the choices had already been made. The conversations were showing me what I had already decided, what I had already committed to, what I had already become. I was just catching up to myself tonight. I heard my voice having a conversation with Principal Vance about my performance review. Thomas has exceeded all expectations, Principal Vance said. His dedication to the school is remarkable. I've never seen anyone adapt so quickly to our special environment. I feel like I've been here all my life, my voice replied. Like I was always meant to be here. Perhaps you were, Principal Vance said. Perhaps we all were. The conversation ended with my voice asking about the paperwork for permanent employment, about the benefits package, about the retirement plan. But there is no retirement plan at Millbrook Elementary. There is only the endless night shift, the eternal routine, the perpetual care of children who never grow old, and a building that never quite settles into the past. Tomorrow night, I suspect I'll hear my voice having a conversation about my first day of work, about how I came to apply for the position, about why I was chosen for this particular job. And I'm beginning to suspect that when I hear that conversation, I'll finally understand that I never applied for this job at all. I was assigned to it by someone who knew I would be perfect for the position, someone who had been watching me, waiting for me, preparing me for the moment when I would walk into Millbrook Elementary and realize I had finally come home. The clock in the main hallway chimes. 3:17 a.m. The conversations stop. The building holds its breath, and I continue my rounds, cleaning floors that are already clean, emptying trash cans that are never full, maintaining a building that maintains itself, because that's what I do here. that's what I've always done here, even before I knew I was doing it. The guest book was the first real clue. I found it in the main office, sitting on the secretary's desk next to a vase of flowers that never wilted and a coffee cup that never emptied. The book was leather-bound with Millbrook Elementary Visitor. Log embossed on the cover in gold lettering. I opened it expecting to find the usual entries: parents signing in for conferences, delivery drivers, maintenance workers. Instead, I found page after page of the same 23 signatures, repeated endlessly, each one dated June 15th, 1967. Sarah Chen, Michael Rodriguez, Emma Thompson, David Park, all of them signing in as if they were visitors to their own school, as if they were guests in the place where they had spent their final day. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that my signature was there too, written in my own handwriting, dated June 15th, 1967. Thomas Mitchell, night custodian. Written in the same careful script I use today. I was 3 years old in 1967. I lived in a different state. I had never heard of Millbrook Elementary, but according to the guest book, I had been working there for 57 years. I flipped through the pages, looking for other dates, other signatures, but there were none. Every entry was from June 15th, 1967. Every signature was one of the 23 children, or Mrs. Whitmore, or Principal Vance, or the school secretary. Mrs. Hamilton, or me, page after page of the same signatures, the same date, the same careful handwriting, as if we had all been signing in for the same day, over and over, for more than half a century. I closed the book and walked to the time clock in the main office. The cards were arranged alphabetically in metal slots, each one marking the hours worked by school employees. I found my card and pulled it out. The entries went back to June 15th, 1967. Every single day. The same routine. Clock in at 11 p.m. Clock out at 6 a.m. 7 hours of work, 5 days a week, for 57 years. But I had only been working at Millbrook Elementary for 12 years. I checked the other time cards. Mrs. Whitmore had been clocking in every day since June 15th, 1967. So had Principal Vance, Mrs. Hamilton, and the other teachers whose names appeared on the old records. We had all been working the same day, repeatedly, for decades. I walked to the school calendar hanging on the wall. It showed the current month, with normal dates and normal scheduling. But when I looked closer, I noticed that every day was marked with the same notation. Review day, lessons from June 15th, 1967. The same lesson plan, repeated endlessly. The same school day, experienced over and over. The same routine, followed by the same people, in the same building, for the same purpose. I went to the library and pulled out a newspaper from the rack. The date was current, but the headlines were all from 1967. The moon landing described as a future possibility. The Vietnam War reported as an ongoing conflict. Fashion trends that had been popular 57 years ago presented as current news. The world outside was moving forward, but inside Millbrook Elementary, time had stopped on June 15th, 1967. I found the school yearbook from 1967 and opened it. To the faculty page, Mrs. Whitmore's photograph smiled back at me, exactly as she looked in room 401, Principal Vance. Dignified and authoritative. Mrs. Hamilton, efficient and organized. And at the bottom of the page, in the support staff section, was my photograph. Younger, but unmistakably me. Thomas Mitchell, night custodian. dedicated to maintaining the special environment that makes Millbrook Elementary a place where learning never ends. I had been part of the school before I was old enough to attend school. I had been working there before I was born. I climbed the stairs to the 4th floor and stood outside room 401 through the window. I could see the 23 children working on an assignment, their heads bent over their papers, their pencils moving in careful formation. Mrs. Whitmore was writing on the blackboard. Time is a circle. Memory is a spiral. Love is a constant. I knocked on the door. Mrs. Whitmore looked up and smiled, then walked over to let me in. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "right on time. We were just discussing the nature of temporal mechanics." "I found the guest book," I said. "I found the time cards. I found the yearbook." "And what did you learn?" she asked. "That this day never ends, that we keep repeating June 15th, 1967, over and over." "Very good," she said. "And why do you think that is?" I looked at the 23 children, all of them listening to our conversation with the intense attention of students who knew they were learning something important. "Because you never got to finish the school year," I said. "Because something happened on June 15th, 1967, that prevented you from having a proper goodbye. So you've been trying to complete that day ever since." Sarah Chen raised her hand. "But Mr. Mitchell, we did finish the day. We had our final lessons. We cleaned out our desks. We said goodbye to our friends. We walked out of the building just like we were supposed to." "Then why are you still here?" I asked. "Because we love it here," said Michael Rodriguez. "Because this is where we belong. Because some places are too important to leave," added Emma Thompson. David Park stood up. "Mr. Mitchell, don't you love it here too?" I looked around the classroom, at the children's bright faces, at Mrs. Whitmore's encouraging smile, at the blackboard covered with lessons about the nature of time and memory and the places that exist outside normal reality. "Yes," I said, "I love it here." "Then why would you want to leave?" asked Mrs. Whitmore. "Why would any of us want to leave?" I realized that the loop wasn't a trap. It was a choice. A decision made by people who loved this place so much that they chose to stay forever, to keep learning and teaching and caring for each other in the safety of a single, perfect day. "What happens if someone wants to leave?" I asked. "They can," Mrs. Whitmore said, "but they have to really want to. They have to choose the uncertainty of tomorrow over the perfection of today. They have to be willing to risk change." "Has anyone ever left?" "A few," she said, "but not many. Most of us realize that we have everything we need right here." I looked at the children again. They were smiling at me with the kind of happiness that comes from knowing exactly where you belong. "Mr. Mitchell," Sarah said, "would you like to see your lesson plan for tomorrow?" She handed me a folder. Inside was a detailed schedule for June 16th, 1967, the day that would never come unless we chose to let it. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow would be unknown. Tomorrow would be a day that could end badly, a day that could bring loss and change and the kind of pain that comes from moving forward in time. Today was perfect. Today was safe. Today was a day when 23 children were happy and learning, and surrounded by people who cared about them. Why would anyone choose to leave a day like that? I closed the folder and handed it back to Sarah. "I think I'll stay for today," I said. "Just for today?" asked Mrs. Whitmore. "For today," I said, "and maybe tomorrow, and maybe the day after that. One day at a time," she said. "That's how we all stay." The children applauded. their faces bright with welcome and acceptance. And I realized that I had finally found my place in the world, even if that place existed outside the world entirely. The exit door should have been simple. Metal, painted institutional green, with a push bar and a sign that read "Emergency exit only, alarm will sound." I had walked past it thousands of times during my rounds, never paying attention, never wondering what lay beyond it. But tonight, something was different. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see sunlight. Real sunlight, warm and golden, with the quality of light that comes in late afternoon when the school day is ending, and children are gathering their belongings to go home. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. I was standing in the same parking lot I had seen every night for 12 years, but it was different. The cars were older, the design more angular, the colors more subdued. A 1967 Chevrolet sat next to a Ford Galaxy, both of them clean and new and perfectly maintained. The playground equipment was different too. Metal swings instead of plastic, seesaws instead of climbing structures. A merry-go-round that had been removed from the current playground decades ago for safety reasons. And there were children playing. 23 children, ages 6 to 9, laughing and running and enjoying the final recess of the school year. I watched them for a moment, then turned back toward the building. The door had closed behind me, and when I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. The push bar didn't move. The door was solid, immovable, as if it had never been designed to open. I walked around the building, looking for another entrance. The main doors were locked. The windows were too high to reach. The loading dock was sealed shut. I was outside, but I couldn't get back in. That's when I noticed the other people. Adults standing in the parking lot, watching the children play. They were dressed in clothes from 1967, men in narrow ties and dark suits, women in dresses and low heels. They stood perfectly still, their faces turned toward the playground, their expressions patient and expectant. I recognized some of them from old photographs in the school office. Parents from the 1960s, people who had attended PTA meetings and school plays and graduation ceremonies. They were waiting for something, all of them focused on the same moment, the same event. A bell rang inside the building. The children stopped playing and lined up in perfect formation, just as they had been taught. They walked toward the school building in single file, their voices bright with end-of-school excitement. "See you next year," called Sarah Chen to her. "Classmates, have a great summer," replied Michael Rodriguez. "Don't forget to write," added Emma Thompson. They reached the main doors and walked inside. The doors closed behind them with a soft click that seemed to echo across the parking lot. The parents began to move, walking toward their cars, checking their watches, preparing to drive home and wait for their children to arrive. But the children never came out. I waited for an hour, watching the parents wait, listening to the sounds of the empty school. No children emerged from the building. No doors opened. No voices called out goodbyes. The parents waited by their cars, their patience, gradually shifting to concern, then to worry, then to fear. They began to approach the building, trying the doors, peering through windows, calling their children's names, but the building remained silent. I tried to tell them what I knew, tried to explain that their children were safe inside, that they were learning and growing and being cared for by Mrs. Whitmore and the other teachers. But when I spoke, no sound came out. When I moved toward them, they didn't see me. I was there, but I wasn't part of their story. I was watching from somewhere else, some other time, some other version of reality. The parents began to panic. They called the police, the fire department, the school administration. Cars arrived with sirens and flashing lights. People in uniforms rushed into the building, searched every room, every closet, every corner. They found nothing, no children, no teachers, no sign that anyone had been in the building at all. The search continued for hours, then days, then weeks. The story made national news. Investigators came from Washington. Psychics offered their services. The community rallied around the families, offering support and hope and theories about what might have happened. But the children were gone, and I began to understand that I was watching the original event. The day that had created the loop, the moment when 23 children had chosen to stay in a place they loved rather than leave it behind. They had walked into the building on June 15th, 1967, and they had never come out, not because they couldn't leave, but because they didn't want to, because they had found something inside that was better than anything waiting for them outside, because they had discovered that love could be stronger than time, that belonging could be more important than growing up, that some places were worth preserving forever. The parking lot began to fade. The parents dissolved into memory. The 1967 cars became transparent, then disappeared entirely. I was standing in the modern parking lot, under the harsh glow of sodium lights, surrounded by the familiar landscape of the present day. But I could still hear the children's voices drifting from the building behind me, continuing their lessons, following their routine, living their perfect day over and over. I walked to my car and sat behind the wheel. The keys were in my hand, but I didn't start the engine. Instead, I looked at the building, at the windows glowing with warm light, at the silhouettes of children moving through the halls. I could drive away. I could go home to my apartment, to my television, to my normal life in the normal world where time moved forward and days ended and people grew old and died. Or I could go back inside. I could take my place in the loop, accept my role in the story, embrace the routine that had been waiting for me for 57 years. I could become part of something eternal. I sat in the car for a long time, watching the building, listening to the distant sound of children learning, feeling the pull of a place that had chosen me as surely as I had chosen it. Finally, I got out of the car and walked back toward the building. The exit door was open again, spilling warm light into the night. I stepped inside and heard the door close behind me with a soft, final click. The building welcomed me back with the kind of silence that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. And I realized that I had never really left at all. I had just been checking to make sure I wanted to stay. Some places don't haunt you, they absorb you. They pull you in so gently that you don't realize you're being drawn deeper until you're already part of the foundation, part of the structure, part of the story that the building tells to anyone who listens carefully enough. My Millbrook Elementary School is such a place. It doesn't trap its people, it loves them. It doesn't force them to stay, it gives them reasons to choose staying over leaving. It doesn't steal their time, it makes time irrelevant by creating moments so perfect that they deserve to last forever. I understand now why Mrs. Whitmore never left, why Principal Vance continued working long after his death, why the 23 children chose to make June 15th, 1967, their permanent address in time. They found something here that the outside world couldn't offer: the certainty of belonging, the security of being needed, the comfort of knowing that tomorrow would be exactly as wonderful as today. I've been writing this account for 12 years. Every night, at exactly 3:17 a.m. I finish it just as the sun rises, just as my shift ends, just as the normal world prepares to wake up and face another day of uncertainty and change. Then I erase it and start again, not because I'm trapped in a loop, but because the story keeps getting better. Each time I write it, I understand more about the nature of this place, about the choice I made, about the family I've joined. Each time I write it, I remember more about the life I lived before I came here, and I realize how empty it was compared to what I have now. I had an apartment, but I never had a home. I had a job, but I never had a purpose. I had a routine, but I never had a community. Here, I have all of those things. I have children who bring me lunch and thank me for taking care of their school. I have a teacher who includes me in her lessons and values my contributions. I have a building that needs me, that depends on me, that has shaped itself around my presence. I have a place in the world that is exactly the right size for who I am. Tomorrow, I'll write this story again. I'll discover new details, new connections, new reasons to stay. I'll remember more about the day I first walked into this building, more about the moment I realized I was home. And if someone finds this account, if someone reads these words and wonders about the man who wrote them, I hope they'll understand that this isn't a story about being trapped. It's a story about being found. The children are getting ready for their next lesson. Mrs. Whitmore is preparing her blackboard. Principal Vance is organizing his papers. The building is settling into its comfortable routine, the rhythm that has sustained us for 57 years, and I'm getting ready to begin my rounds, to clean the floors that are already clean, too empty, the trash cans that are never full, to maintain the building that maintains itself, because that's what I do here. That's what I've always done here. That's what I'll always do here, until the day I decide to leave. But why would I ever choose to leave a place where every day is perfect, where every person matters, where every moment is preserved like a photograph that never fades? Why would anyone choose uncertainty over belonging? Why would anyone choose tomorrow over today? The clock in the main hallway chimes 3:17 a.m. The children's voices rise in cheerful harmony. Mrs. Whitmore calls the roll, and 23 voices answer present. Soon she'll call my name, and I'll answer present too, because I am present. I am here. I am part of this place and this moment and this story that continues to write itself. Night after night, year after year, decade after decade. I am home. Subscribe to the Creepy Journal before you forget how you found us. Ring that notification bell, because some stories find their way back to you whether you're ready or not. And remember, some places choose you long before you choose them. Some stories begin years before you realize you're part of them. Some homes wait patiently for decades until their perfect resident finally walks through the door. The question isn't whether you'll find your place in the world. The question is whether you'll recognize it when you do, and whether you'll have the courage to stay. The children are calling my name now. It's time to begin my rounds. It's time to start another perfect day.